And that is why today I'm so delighted that Secretary Buttigieg is here today joining us to highlight just how critical this work is and actually see firsthand what the federal dollars can help contribute. And you can really see it around here. There's a ferry going by right now. There's fishing boats, there's houseboats, more on the docks, and you can see the shipyard across the bay. You can see local spots like Peninsula Bevco, which showcases so many amazing local brewers, if you have time later. The dock, where we just had a great lunch, as you heard, and just so much more. So in other words, you can see how this new breakwater will keep boats and businesses and families safe. And it's really, as the governor knows, going to help strengthen our climate resiliency. So Port Orchard is better prepared for that next weather disaster we know we will have, and which is so important as we tackle climate crisis. This is the bipartisan infrastructure law at work right here in Port Orchard. This is actually the appropriations process at work right here. And this is Congress investing in our communities to make life better for folks. So it's great to be here today with all of you to celebrate, and I'm especially excited to thank Senator Buttigieg for coming out, for his strong work at the federal level, and being such a great supporter for our projects here in Washington State. Secretary Buttigieg.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for the warm welcome, and thanks to everyone for hosting us so kindly. To Jim and the whole Port Authority really have such regard for the work that you do. Chairman Forsman, thank you for acknowledging how seriously our administration takes the nation-to-nation relationship, and we're committed to maintaining that and continuing to work together with this and with all of the tribes that are so important to the life of this country. And we know how important it is to do right by tribal citizens in all of this work. I want to thank Governor Inslee for his leadership, both as an incredibly important leader nationwide on climate and leading a state government that understands the importance of infrastructure. And I can tell you the work that he has led and that your legislature has done, and the terrific partnership we have with Secretary Millar and the state DOT is not something that can be taken for granted. Not every state has that. And it can make us a better and easier partner to work with at the federal level when we're engaging with a state that is there to make sure that there is a vision and the necessary resources to have not just cleaner, greener, but also more effective and reliable transportation. So we're honored to have you today, and it's a pleasure working with you and your team. I want to thank Congressman Kilmer, who is, as was mentioned, a very important leader in the House on so many issues, a very effective advocate for this district. Matter of fact, he was already in my ear about the next project that he thinks is very important, as he should be, and really glad for his support, because the funding that we're talking about today would not have happened, wouldn't be here, without that bipartisan infrastructure law. It would not have gotten to President Biden's desk without the support that we had from friends and allies in the House and, of course, in the Senate, where Washington State punches above its weight with two powerhouse senators who have been such essential, vital, effective, and successful partners to President Biden and to this administration. And I would be saying that even if we did not depend on them for our appropriations and our authorization, respectively, to keep our department in business. We're working with Senator Cantwell, Chair Cantwell, as we speak, as we look toward the reauthorization of the FAA, and in so many respects have turned to her for support and leadership, including, again, getting this infrastructure bill done. Likewise, Senator Murray, Chair Murray, that extra funding is a big part of how we have been able to say yes. I know from inception you have been there when it was the Tiger Grant, now the RAISE grant that has enabled us to be in communities across the I'll say a little more about this in a moment, but really touching every part of America's transportation systems. And I'll just say what a pleasure it is to be here. I know you always say that at the beginning of a speech, but the former naval officer in me understands the importance of Kitsap County. The former mayor in me loves being able to support local work and a community that clearly is very proud and deserves a wind at your back from the federal government. And the transportation secretary in me is just delighted to be here to celebrate this Port Orchard breakwater replacement, something we know the community has been working toward for a long time, and that we're so proud to support as a great example of what President Biden's Invest in America agenda looks like in practice. I know the deep relationship that this community and this region has with the water, beginning with when the ancestors of the Suquamish people were settling the areas around Puget Sound. And ever since then, that deep relationship has been such an important part of the lives and livelihoods of everyone in this region, whether it's fishing, sailing, waterborne transportation, and that importance is just as great today as it was 1,000 years ago. And that Port Orchard breakwater is, of course, a big part of what makes this way of life possible. It still supports tribal fishing, just as it supports daily commutes on those ferries, even emergency response services. And when that breakwater has come to be over 2 decades past its intended lifespan, with storm damage that has left it closed to the public and climate change only making things worse, rising sea levels and extreme weather happening more and more often, we know how important it is to get this done. And the community has recognized this for a long time. And you have come together to find a solution. So I am so thrilled to join you to celebrate the fact that we are doing our part to help deliver that solution with $9.4 million for this port project. This new breakwater is going to do so much good out of one project to support the Kitsap ferry system that carries tens of thousands of passengers each month, to help people access jobs and resources and opportunities for far more quickly and more affordably in the long run than they could, certainly than they could by driving. The chance to continue protecting, as was mentioned earlier, the only maritime refueling station in the area, and continue serving as the only public cargo transfer facility in the community. The chance to provide new electric charging for boats and ferries like the zero-emissions Kitsap Transit Ferry that we were excited to fund last year, the first of what will eventually be an entire fleet of electrified ferries. And that continued support for the Suquamish people who will have permanent rights to part of the breakwater for mooring those fishing vessels and for unloading cargo. All of that together makes this a terrific project. And if you'll indulge me in a little bit of math, I should note that this project's expected to deliver a net benefit of over $185 million to this community in the form of increased safety, more jobs, stronger industries, faster travel, and so much more, which is a pretty great return on a $9 million federal investment. That's the great thing about this funding, is it unlocks more value for the American people. And as impressive as this project is, the other fantastic news is it's one of 162 grants around the country that we announced last week through that RAISE program, supporting efforts all across the U.S. We're replacing 9 outdated bridges in rural Iowa, strengthening the regional supply chain there and saving residents time on their commutes. We're adding crosswalks and pavement and traffic signals around half a dozen schools in Philadelphia, making it easier and safer for kids to get to school and go home. Last week I was in Orangeburg, South Carolina, a community of deep importance in the civil rights movement that will connect now 2 HBCUs to the downtown business district. And in Lexington, Kentucky, we're reconstructing an overpass to make travel safer and communities more accessible, while east of there in Appalachia, we're helping a community that was repeatedly flooded strengthen their dam while we're improving the highways there. And those are just a few. Some of these are in big cities, some of them are in rural areas. 70% of these projects are in historically underserved communities. And thanks to President Biden's leadership and thanks to the leadership of the congressional representatives you see here, we got that infrastructure package that now allows us to fund more projects than ever. But I should emphasize, even with that generous and much-needed funding, this remains an incredibly competitive program. We got $15 billion in requests for that $2.2 billion we're fortunate to have. And I mention that only to emphasize that even with those revised criteria and that additional funding, there is no community that is a slam dunk for a project like this. So you have a lot to be proud of, because only the very best projects made the cut, and this is one of them. And for those projects who haven't got funded yet, this is just one of our programs. There's more than 40 in the DOT alone made possible by that legislation, and it's just 1 year. So we're going to continue to see more good news like this. Matter of fact, we've been able to track over 30,000 projects nationwide that we've been able to fund through programs ranging from the low and no emission bus program, which is getting American-made buses out to communities around the country, to a combined grant program that'll fund some of the largest bridges and infrastructure projects in the country, to the program we just opened up yesterday for its second round, reconnecting communities to better link people to jobs and resources where infrastructure has divided them in the past. So we really are just getting started, and this is the outset of that infrastructure decade that America has craved for so long. We are thrilled to be here. The only thing I love more than a project announcement is a ribbon cutting, so I hope you'll save me a seat when the work is all done so we can come celebrate that. And again, just a huge congratulations to everyone here and to this community on receiving this funding and on this terrific, terrific project. It's a great thing. So I think we have just a little time for questions from reporters, which will be quarterbacked by our colleague Ben.
Go left or right here.
All righty.
Mr. Secretary, you were in Mukilteo earlier today. What are your thoughts about what the ferry system is doing? You know the problems over there. It's aging. They're trying to get people to come and work there. What are your observations about what they have and where they can go?
Well, we had a great visit to Mukilteo. Was able to see the new facility there, and later on use the ferry system to get part of our way over here. And the first thing you see, of course, is the importance of ferries to daily commutes. I think there might be an idea, if you're a little further inland, maybe where I come from, that ferries are sort of a bonus, a nice to have, but they are absolutely essential for so many people to get to where they need to be. So in addition to planes, trains, and automobiles, it's part of what we focus on. And often it shows up in the budget as so-called highway funding, but we make sure it gets to transit like the ferry system. I also want to recognize that what we see there is the importance of workforce, right? You got to have the infrastructure, you got to have the ships, but you got to have the people too and invest in those people. And I know that's a conversation that the DOT is very intentional about, the state DOT here, that the governor's put a lot of thought into making sure that we have the kind of workforce we need to successfully operate all of our transit and transportation systems. And the last thing I would mention is the overlap and the reinforcing quality between doing the right thing environmentally and doing the right thing in terms of just getting people from point A to point B. Because the newer designs will ultimately mean more reliable ferry service at the same time as you have greener, cleaner ferry service. So you got cleaner air, you're fighting climate change with this electrification effort, and they're doing it in a way that's going to lead to better reliability for commuters. And we're very proud to be supporting that with some of the federal funds we can bring to the table.
Is that a priority?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about transit. Sometimes that's subways and buses, but often that's ferries, and that gets a lot of attention in our department.
Because obviously, look, I'm proud that of the people of Washington State Ferries are doing everything humanly possible to staff these boats. Everything humanly possible. We were just at the dock and we were talking to Roger and some of the people who work on the dock. They were appreciative that we now give ferry workers 40 hours guaranteed work, so it's a more attractive place to come to work, right? If you're guaranteed, that's a new thing on the ferry routes. We're giving new employees the right to be in a certain area, so you don't have to drive from Anacortes to Vashon when you go to work for the Washington State Ferries. We have a new way of training people which gives them work on the water so they can build up their time on the water so that they can become mates and captains ultimately. We're doing everything humanly possible to recruit people back out of retirement. And those efforts are having fruit. We're increasing the number of people that are staffing, and we're increasing the reliability of the boats. And I will say this, thanks to the people in the Washington State Ferries who made superb judgments that when we lost power in the Walla Walla, nobody got hurt, thanks to the Washington State Ferries. They know what they're doing.
I talked to some ferry commuters today, and they say we have the biggest fleet in the country, and we should be the best, but we're not. And this is at all nothing against the staff. I mean, I have never talked to anyone because they're amazing. I talked to one man who was on the Walla Walla and said the reason that it was the best beach he's ever had was because of the staff. But with that said, I mean, we have said there's an electric fleet by 2035. We're 12 years out. We don't have one. We don't have a contract with one. We have people in the San Juan saying we're cut off right now. How are we going to say, yes, this electric fleet is going to happen when we have nothing to show for it right now?
People the answer to. He's got a tough enough job without having to answer the Washington State Ferries. Look, we don't have enough boats. When Tim Hyman passed his initiative, it cut the ankles out from the financing of the Washington State Ferries. As a result, we didn't get any boats, and now we don't have the boats that we need. Now, this doesn't sound like rocket science, but the way we're solving this is we are building ferry boats. We are building a conversion of 3 new ones, the existing jumbos that we converted to electric, and we have 5 other boats that are now being financed by our great Washington State legislators that are finally putting the money to build these boats. The boats are on the way. We have contracts outstanding. In the next few weeks, we will have proposals. We hope to actually build these boats, and we hope to be soon laying those keels. So that is happening. But it is happening finally because we've decided to make this investment. Tim Hyman killed the Washington State Ferries. I'm rebuilding them. We're going to get those boats back in the water. Okay?
Still a good
Yes, we hope in just the next several years to lay the keels of these first boats. Yes, it is a timeline we intend to meet. We did have a little hiccup because one of our contractors sort of went south on us, so we have to rebid the project. But we believe we're getting good interest, and we can build these boats on time, under budget, and they're beautiful vessels.
I can't say any better than that. I will emphasize, having the largest ferry fleet in the country also means having the largest challenges of any ferry fleet in the country. And we want to make sure we're a good federal partner for the work that's being done here, and look forward to continuing to do our part.
Beyond ferries, beyond the breakwater, as far as air travel goes, can we talk about what you see in the future for the Pacific Northwest when it comes to airports, possibly additional airports?
Well, what we see is growth. There is a lot of demand, and that's good news economically, but you got to have the infrastructure to back that up. And that's part of why we're trying to you want to come join? Look, when it comes to meeting the growing air travel demand, we've got to make sure that we have the infrastructure to support it, and we're funding that. It's why we have funding going into SeaTac. This year brought more news, I think about $15 million headed for a key project there, all the way over to Spokane, where I had a chance last year to see some of their needs, that they're getting funding as well for improvements in capacity. So we've got to do that to make sure that there's a better passenger experience. And at the same time, we've got to make sure the entire national airspace has the resources it needs, which is why we're working with leaders in Congress to get the resources for staffing at the FAA to have enough air traffic controllers, and for the technology that we need to support that as well.
Mr. Secretary, in my talking with writers of Mukilteo Transit and the Washington State Ferry, many who commute via the Port Orchard or the Bremerton route feel that they have been deprioritized given the constant pushing back of the restoration of the Seattle-Bremerton route, namely in comparison to the Seattle-Bainbridge route. What should ferry commuters hear from you, and should they be confident in what's going on right now? Should they feel like more setbacks are coming?
Well, I can't speak to one route or another route within the system. What I can tell you is that we're going to make sure there's a rising tide of resources behind the ferry system, and that's what it means to bring the resources we are, whether it's the $4.5 million going into the charging facilities at the Clinton stop that we talked about this morning, or whether it's the funding going into this breakwater. We need to make sure that the system as a whole gets the backing it deserves after decades of nationwide underinvestment in not just the ferries, but the roads and bridges, the ports and airports, and the rails and transit of this country. We're changing that. We're turning that around. And it's not going to happen overnight, just like the underinvestment didn't happen overnight. But the transformation is not only going to lead to better service, it's going to lead to a lot of good jobs along the way. And that's part of why we're so excited about this round of announcements that we're able to make this week and this year.
We have time for one more question. Maybe I'll just follow up real quick. Is Washington State Ferry filling those jobs at a rate that they would deem fit to make that 2035 deadline as well?
Yes, we will certainly. We don't want to wait till 2035. We have efforts to restore these runs in weeks and months rather than years and decades. So we are on target to do that. We are increasing our staffing. This is a priority. Look, people here in Port Orchard and Bremerton are just as valuable or more valuable than anybody else who lives in Kitsap County. We've had to make some very difficult decisions about prioritization. We've had to serve the most people the soonest, and that's how decisions are being made. But I can tell you, I had a meeting on this 3 days ago. We are staffing up at a considerably increased rate, in part because of the creative work we're doing to try to have a new way to train people. Look, you can't just take people off the street and stick them on the bridge. It takes years and years and years to be oilers, to be mates, to be captains. We're doing everything we humanly possibly can to recruit people to get in the pipeline so that they can eventually get the training that takes years to take those jobs. I'll tell you to the extent that it's on my mind. We just came over here in the Spokane, and I talked to this woman that's been on the deckhand for about 5 years, wonderful woman. She worked in the ticket counter. Now she's working on the deck. And I said, can you help me recruit some more people? And she said, yeah, my son, I'm talking to him about working on the ferries. And I said, what's his name? She said, his name is Levi. So I took out the governor's card and I wrote, Levi, come join us. Jay Inslee. I'm working for you, buddy, okay?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, everybody.